if there are problems in our family and we want to help, how can we help others?
We should definitely help not only our family members but anyone who we can help, because helping others selflessly without expecting any gains for ourselves is very good for us, because it puts us in a state in which we can get closer and closer to God. Now, there are problems in many families, or in most families. There's one problem or another, and if a problem is producing stress, then we need to look at the basics of the problems and try to find those areas which can help. As an example, sometimes we find that the problems have occurred because of a misunderstanding. One person said something, another one thought something else was said. Okay, that creates a problem. And once we get to the grassroots of the problem, then we should try to solve it at that level. So we should find out what the problem is, and then based on the problem, we need to talk to people, help them, make arrangements so whatever the problem is can be worked out. Generally, it is found that most problems are based on some kind of a misunderstanding, or some parties not wanting to do some things that make sense. So if we can get to the root of what is creating the stress, then we can actively try to pull that down. We need to have a realistic balance in our lives. We should definitely help our elders, and this is what I was trying to say before, that what is needed is to make the right arrangements. Now, whether the arrangements involve us or providing the kind of help that they need through another party, we need to make sure that they are comfortable and the help that is needed by them is provided to them. And as long as we can do that, then we are doing the right thing. We need a balance. But let's say you have 10 areas in which you need to put your attention. So then you have to look at your own life and provide a happy balance, because if you don't, and if you go too much on any one side, you're going to neglect the other responsibilities, which is not good also. So that is what sometimes is difficult to do, but you have to sit down. And what I have found in my life is, like, whenever one is faced with a situation which is very difficult to handle, in which there are a lot of activities going on, that it is best to write things down. And once we write the different activities, and we can write what the pros and cons are, then once they are written, things are very clear to us. But once we are only thinking about them, then our thought patterns cannot bring us to a logical conclusion, because the mind will give more weight to some areas and less to others. But once we put them on paper, then we are forced to look at those areas in a manner in which we will give them the right weightage which is needed for that activity to be done.
In this meditation, is it important to practice breath control?
In the form of meditation which is taught in Sant-mat or Surya Shabd Yoga, we do not worry about our breathing. Okay, the great masters, Hazur Baba Sawan Singh Ji Maharaj, Param Sant Kirpal Singh Ji Maharaj, and our gracious master Sandarshan Singh Ji Maharaj, they have taught this method in which they let the body function normally. When we are doing our day-to-day activities, we are not worried if we are breathing or not, if our blood is circulating or not, if our heart is beating or not. Those things just happen by themselves, because those are what are called the motor currents in the bodies. These are the currents that control our day-to-day living. Now, in Santmat, our masters have told us that we should let the body function normally and let the motor currents just go on normally, but instead we should withdraw our sensory currents. So this is why our five senses, the sense of sight, of hearing, of smell, of taste and of touch, are the ones that we withdraw. And so we do not do anything with the breathing. We let our breathing go normally, and we close our eyes and we focus our attention here right in front of us. We start at the sixth chakra, or the ajna, the eye focus, the eye chakra. And breathing has to go normally. We do not want to put any attention controlling it, because our body should be functioning normally, because what we're doing is nothing physical in nature. This is a spiritual experience which has nothing to do with the physical body. So we want the physical body to run normally, and we don't want to touch any of the systems which control our physical body. Yeah.
Can we practice total forgiveness without giving up our principles?
It has been commonly said by a lot of saints and mystics that strength comes from giving and not from taking. When we give to the world, it might look like it is an act of cowardice, that we've given in to something. But it is in giving that we need a lot more strength than we need in trying to take things and in doing things in a manner in which we want. Now, in our life, we should definitely have ethical principles. In those principles, we do not want to go beyond. But if someone has made a mistake, and it could be a mistake of any dimension, we as human beings should try our best to forgive them, because who are we to judge their actions? All our actions are judged by the Almighty. And this is what the law of karma is. Like, for every action there is a reaction. Now, when an act happens in our life which is an act in which we are bothered very much, forgiveness might be very difficult to give, but if we don't give forgiveness, then so much of our attention keeps on focused on that activity, and so much stress and strain is generated in our lives from that incident that it hampers us much more in our development on the spiritual way than when we forgive and forget. You know, forgiving and forgetting is very, very difficult to do, because it's an act of giving. And if we do not forgive and forget, then in our own self we have tensions and stresses and thoughts which keep on putting us in a state of why did it happen, how did it happen, why didn't it change, and we get more and more distressed, and that is a way that our mind tries to keep us occupied in that activity. Now we all know that for us to gain spiritually, we need to get away from the clutches of our mind. We need to be able to focus on our real self, on our soul, and we need to be able to go within. So if we don't forgive and forget, then that activity is always bothering us and our attention cannot be focused when we try to sit in meditation. But forgiveness does not mean that we should have no principles. Principles are definitely needed. As an example, you would not want to go and steal things of others. A good principle is to live on your own earnings. If someone has stolen something from you, whatever legal requirements are done, those are okay to be done. But you need to, if the person is caught, and if you found who it is, you need to forgive and forget them, because he should not waste your time and efforts into trying to go steal things from that person. I'm just giving a common example like that. There are many examples like that. Because we need to be sure that we do not break principles in our own life. But if someone else has broken principles, we need to be able to forgive them, give them another chance.
Can you please comment on the Master and devotion to the Master?
There is a great benefit by being physically in the presence of an enlightened being. The reason is that when we are in the presence of a great saint, a mystic, then our attention is focused on the spiritual way. The Master, who is one with God, who is one with the divine current of light and sound, is radiating divinity in our direction, is radiating spirituality towards us. And when we are in the physical presence of the Master, then our attention is totally engrossed in him. And when our attention is totally engrossed in the Master, then at that time we are neither thinking of anything, neither are we speaking, neither are we acting or doing anything, so that in that time frame no karma is created for us. This is why the great masters have laid tremendous stress on being able to attend satsangs, because it is in a satsang that our attention is totally engrossed in the Master and we do not create any karmas for us. And we need to get to a state where we lead a life in which we create the least amount of karmas. Now, since the enlightened being is in tune with the divine current of light and sound, so the charging that we receive comes through the eyes of the Master. That even in a satsang, we might listen to the words, but real spirituality is coming to us through the eyes. And as we come in contact with this spiritual radiation, which is emanating from the eyes of the Master, it draws our soul out of the body and it connects our soul with the divine current of light and sound of God. Now, at the early stages of our development, it is very, very useful to be in the physical presence of the Master, because we need all the help that we can get. And as we draw or withdraw from the body and are able to get to the radiant or the ethereal form of the Master, then with time the inner Master is who helps us through this spiritual journey. So as we grow on the spiritual path, we are then able to reach a state in which, when we meditate, we can be with the radiant or the ethereal form of a Master, of a spiritual guide. And that form then helps guide us through the various spiritual regions. And at that stage, whether we are physically close to our Master or we are thousands and thousands of miles away, it does not matter anymore, because we have then reached a state where we are in the presence of the Master at all times when we close our eyes. And it is this inner Master, it is this ethereal form of the Master which then helps us rise above physical body consciousness and get into the spiritual regions within. This is why all the scriptures have laid a lot of stress on the Guru. You know, when you read any one of the scriptures, there's a lot of stress laid on the saint or the mystic or the enlightened being who can make our connection with the Holy Word. And the importance of being in the physical presence is that there is a magnetism, there is this charging, the spiritual energy which is radiating from the great saints and mystics, which helps us withdraw our attention from the world, because we are caught up in this maze of mind, matter and illusion. And this maze is very dense, and it is very difficult to get out of this maze. But when we come in the presence of a great saint, then his magnetism, his spiritual radiation draws us out of this maze, so that our attention is focused on the spiritual regions within, so that we can collect our sensory currents, which are the ones which draw our attention out into the world, that we can collect them and we can withdraw them from the world outside, and we can focus them at what is called the seat of the soul, which is within, which is between and behind the two eyebrows. And once we collect our sensory currents there, then we are able to cross the lights, the skies, the stars, the moon and the sun, and we are able to get to the radiant or the ethereal form of a spiritual Master, who then becomes our unpaid counselor. You know, we can ask him questions, he will respond, he will give us answers, he becomes our guide. And just like we can talk to the physical master at the physical level, we can talk to this radiant form of the master within and ask for guidance, and at that state there is no difference whether we are in the physical presence of the master or not, because we have the radiant or the ethereal form of the master which will guide us into the spiritual regions. But to get to that stage takes a lot of time, a lot of devotion, a lot of effort, so that our attention from the world outside is gradually cut off. Because it is only when our attention from the world outside is withdrawn that we are able to go into the inner spiritual regions, to the regions which give us love, which give us peace, which put us in a state of bliss.
Sant Darshan Singh Ji Maharaj said that the grace showered upon us is boundless, and it is a shame that we don't recognize it. Can you comment on this?
What Master Darshan is telling us there is that our masters have bestowed the greatest gift that we can get in this lifetime, and that is the gift of being able to be connected with the divine light and sound of God. That the gift of initiation, that the gift of Namdan that we have received through the grace of our Master is a gift which is beyond any other gift that we can receive in this world. Because this is a gift which is divine, this is a spiritual gift, this is a gift which solves the purpose of a life. This is a gift which takes our soul, which is our real self, which is covered with layers and layers of mind, matter and illusion, and through this gift of the holy word, of the Nam, of the Shabd, we have been able, with the grace of a Master, to pierce through these layers and layers and get to the soul, so that our soul then can experience that it is of the same essence as that of God. If we take a light bulb and put a number of thick dark layers over it, no light shines from it. And that is our situation. It's the situation of our soul. Our soul is covered with so many layers that it cannot recognize the light that shines forth from it. Our soul is a part of God, and being a part of God, it is full of the love of God. It is full of the light of God. It is totally conscious. But since our soul is covered with different layers of illusion, of Maya, we are not able on our own to recognize that we are a soul. We live in this world and all we think is that we are this body. That's all we think. As we are born, as we are brought up, we are given a name. And the name is associated with this body. So we go to school, we are called a name by a teacher, our parents call us a name, and that is associated with this human body. And we do not recognize that we are anything beyond this body, because in this body we have been given the physical senses, those senses that help us live in this world. We have the sense of sight, through which we see things, and by being able to see things, we can react accordingly. We have the sense of hearing, through which we hear things, and then we can learn things, we can respond. We have the sense of smell, through which we can smell things. We have the sense of taste, which help us in differentiating between the kind of foods that we like and the foods that we don't like. And then we have the sense of touch, which gives us feeling, sensations. So our senses have been given in this body to sense and feel this physical world and live accordingly in this world. Now, since these are all physical senses, every action that happens through one of these senses is physical in nature. As an example, we see physical objects by these eyes. We don't see any other objects by these eyes except objects which are physical in nature. We hear the physical sounds by these ears, the sounds that come which are made by human beings, by instruments that have been developed by human beings. So these eyes and ears and other senses only make us feel, make us know what is happening in this physical world, so that we can live in this world, we can act in this world. And we start to consider our body as a real self, and we lead our lives so that we are adjusted in this world. Now, in that scene, we are under the clutches of Kal, because Kal wants us to be engrossed in this world. And so our life just goes on. We don't know what's happening. We just live our life. We are born, and all we do is we try to study hard, develop our intellect, get a good job, make a good living, provide for our families, make sure they are settled, and then finally we pass away. And we have gone through life without understanding what our purpose is, who we really are, and our life, which is a life in the human body, is kind of wasted because we are back in the cycle of transmigrations. Because then we go into the cycle of 8.4 million of species. Now, in this world, we can get gifts of riches from others, gifts of properties from others, gifts of jewels and diamonds from others, gifts of name and fame, because we can be put in a place of name and fame by others. And these are all gifts which are of this world. But the gift that we get from a saint or a mystic, from an enlightened being, from a spiritual master, is a gift which is beyond this physical world. It's the gift of Nam, it's the gift of Shabd. It is that gift which takes us out of the cycle of lives and deaths. It is that gift which makes us understand who we really are. It is a gift which makes us understand that we are not this human body, that this is just a rented vehicle. Because we all have to leave this, could be 50 years, could be 100 years, could be 80 years. We are all going to physically die one day. And so the gift of knowing who we are, the gift of connecting our real selves, our souls, with the divine light and sound of God, is a gift which has no parallels. Nothing compares to this great gift, because it is the greatest of all gifts, that we can receive, because having received initiation, we first have a contact with the divine current of light and sound. Secondly, we learn the techniques by which we can come in contact with this divine current, so that we can take steps back to our eternal home, back to the lap of God, so that our soul, which is a part of God, which has been separated from God for eons and eons, has an opportunity to go back and merge in the source from where it came, so that we are out of these cycles of lives and deaths. So that is the greatest gift that our beloved Master is talking about, and that is a gift that we don't understand, because after having got that gift, we still are caught up in our own lives. That the web which has been created by Kal is so strong that we are not able to get out of it unless we put an effort, unless the grace of the Masters is there. And with their grace, they make our connection with the divine light and sound of God, but we need to put some effort too. You know, our gracious Master Sandarshan Singh Ji Maharaj used to say that 75% of our life is preordained, but we still have 25% free will. And it is in the domain of this free will that we can better ourselves. So having received the boon of initiation, it is up to us to make the best use of this gift. It is up to us to be able to find time for our spiritual practices. It is up to us to put in a regular effort on a daily basis in our spiritual practices, so that this connection that has been made with the divine light and sound of God by the grace of a Master is solidified, so that we can travel back on the light and sound of God to our eternal home, to the Creator.
What is our origin and our relationship with the Creator?
We all know that this world has been there for many, many years. But we also know that scientists and researchers all over the world are trying to find answers to the origin of our world, as to how we came into being, how this world came into being. And they have been researching for many, many years, and science generally puts up a theory and then tries to find proofs for the theory. That's a scientific way of finding out any information or explaining whatever is happening in any given situation. Now the scriptures tell us that this world came with the creation of the divine light and sound of God, which is called the Holy Word, the Anhar Shab. And scientists have been looking at matter to find out what are we really made of. In about 25 or 30 years ago, with the instruments which were available to the scientists, they had broken matter down into molecules which are made of atoms, which themselves are made of electrons and protons and neutrons. And these were the smallest elements which science knew at that age. And it was felt that there was a nucleus and these were moving around to make a molecule. With the latest research in science which has come out in the last 5 years, talks about these elements, these electrons and protons and neutrons, these subparticles, also being made of other particles which are nowadays called quarks. And the thing that is new is that not only are the smallest particles made up of other particles, but that there is nothing which is solid. The matter which looks to us to be solid is actually a movement, a vibration. And when you look at this scientific discovery, it correlates with what the great saints and mystics have been saying for many, many years. This whole world is reverberating on the divine sound current, on the anashabd, on the unstruck melody. And it is that divine current of light and sound of God through which this creation came into being. And each and every living form, whether it be an animal, a human being, or a bird, has that life impulse in it. And that our universe, and there are many, many universes, and scientists have also found that not only is there one sun and one moon, this is the one for our universe. There are many, many other galaxies, there are many, many other planets, there are many, many others happenings in creation. And that behind the planets there is a system, that this creation did not come in a haphazard manner, that there is a basis behind this creation, there is some logic behind the creation, and it is that balance which keeps the planets from striking with each other, which keeps the moon from falling down, which makes the moon orbit the earth, which makes the earth orbit the sun, that there is a system which has been put in place by the Creator, by God, and the divine sound current is in each and every living form in life, that each and every part of this creation is